The massive cheetah's amber eyes locked onto Amira, the golden retriever who had raised her. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to stop. A heavy silence fell over the Cincinnati Wildlife Sanctuary. Even the birds perched on the distant acacia branches went quiet, as if sensing the weight of the moment. Amira stood perfectly still, her golden fur glistening under the muted afternoon light. Her tail, once wagging eagerly, froze mid-air. Across the enclosure, Kira, the cheetah now grown into a majestic predator, crouched low, muscles rippling beneath her sleek spotted coat. The two beings stared at each other, mother and daughter, predator and prey, bound by something stronger than instinct. For those who watched from behind the observation glass, it felt like standing at the edge of two worlds. "Don't move," whispered Clara Varela, the sanctuary's director, her voice barely audible. "Let's see what she remembers." Then, the story rewound 3 years earlier, to the day it all began. It had been a stormy afternoon when the phone rang in Clara's office. "We've lost her," a trembling voice said on the other end. A female cheetah from the rescue program had died during labor, leaving behind 3 fragile cubs no bigger than a handful. Their eyes were sealed shut, their bodies weak and cold, their tiny chests rising and falling in desperate rhythm. Clara felt her throat tighten. She knew the statistics. Hand-rearing cheetahs rarely succeeded. Without the warmth of a mother's body and the rhythm of her heartbeat, these cubs had maybe 6 hours to live. Human care alone could never replace the bond of instinct. She paced the infirmary, glancing at the incubator where the cubs lay, curled together, mewling faintly. "They won't make it through the night," murmured Dr. Rafael Ibanez, the sanctuary's veterinarian. "They need a mother, not a nurse." And that's when Clara thought of Amira. Amira had just finished weaning her own litter of puppies 2 weeks earlier. Her milk was drying up, but her body still radiated maternal warmth. She was calm, patient, and deeply nurturing, the kind of dog who'd adopt a squirrel or a duckling if given the chance. Clara knelt beside Amira's pen. The retriever lifted her head, eyes soft and questioning. "Hey, sweetheart," Clara said gently, stroking her golden fur. "How would you feel about helping some babies that aren't quite like yours?" Moments later, they brought in the incubator. The cubs were trembling, their tiny cries almost inaudible. Clara's hands shook as she placed the first cub, a female with faint spots across her forehead, near Amira's belly. What happened next felt like witnessing a miracle. Amira sniffed the cub cautiously, then began to lick it, her tongue moving with the same rhythmic tenderness she had used on her own puppies. She cleaned its face, nudged it closer, then looked up at Clara as if asking permission to continue. When Clara nodded, Amira circled around the 3 cubs, curling her warm body around them like a protective shield. Within minutes, the cubs found her and began to nurse. Clara covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "She's doing it," whispered one of the caretakers. "She's really doing it." From that moment, Amira became more than a surrogate. She became a mother again. For 8 weeks, the sanctuary transformed into a cradle of life. Each morning, the staff would find Amira lying peacefully with the 3 cubs, Kira, Suri, and Max, nestled against her. Their soft chirps mixed with Amira's steady breathing, a lullaby of 2 species woven into harmony. Visitors would often stop by the observation window, stunned by the sight. A golden retriever surrounded by 3 spotted cubs, licking their faces, guiding them gently with her nose as they stumbled through their first steps. The cubs, though wild by nature, mirrored Amira's behavior. They followed her everywhere, to the feeding area, to the grassy yard, even to her favorite resting spot beneath the old oak tree. They climbed over her back, tugged her ears, and wrestled with her tail, their tiny growls turning into squeaks of delight. Amira, endlessly patient, let them tumble and nip until she decided enough was enough. A single, gentle bark, and the cubs would freeze, then roll onto their backs in submission. As days melted into weeks, the bond deepened. The cubs began showing flashes of their wild instincts, stalking Amira's tail, crouching low in the tall grass, practicing pounces on fallen leaves. Yet, when night came, they would return to her, purring loudly as she licked their fur clean and curled around them once more. It was a sight that left the staff speechless. "You can't teach this," Clara said one evening, watching from the fence. "It's something ancient, something love remembers. But even miracles must bow to nature's laws." By the time the cubs turned 6 months old, they were already taller and stronger than their golden guardian. Their games had grown rougher, not out of malice, but instinct. Amira, though still loving, had to dodge their clumsy swipes and powerful leaps. One afternoon, a caretaker noticed Amira flinch when Max playfully pawed at her shoulder. "It's starting," Clara sighed. "They're growing up." The decision came heavy and unavoidable. The cubs were to be moved to a larger enclosure, one built for predators, not puppies. Clara stood by Amira's pen that evening, her heart aching. "You did more than anyone could have asked," she whispered. "But it's time." When they carried the cubs away, Amira followed to the gate, tail low, eyes full of confusion. She watched as the truck disappeared down the dirt path, carrying her cubs into the wild enclosure. For days, she lingered near the fence, whining softly into the wind, as if calling them home. And though she could not know it, the cubs, restless and pacing in their new space, answered her in their own way, chirping into the fading light. The transition was devastating, not just for Amira, but for everyone who had witnessed the miracle of her bond with the cubs. On the first morning after the separation, Amira stood at the fence line, her nose pressed against the cool metal mesh, whining softly into the dawn mist. The sound was mournful, drawn out, the kind of cry only a mother makes when she's lost something she doesn't understand how to find again. Her tail hung low, her food untouched. She refused to leave the spot where she had last seen them. Beyond the fence, the cheetahs paced restlessly in their new enclosure. Kira let out short chirps. Suri circled the perimeter, and Max pawed at the ground, confused. Their new space was vast, filled with tall grass and open fields, a place designed for predators to stretch their legs and awaken their instincts, but for weeks they ignored it. They sat near the far gate instead, staring toward the direction of Amira's kennel, as though waiting for her golden shape to appear again. Clara and her team tried to comfort Amira. "She needs time," one caretaker whispered, kneeling beside the retriever. But time, it seemed, moved differently for Amira. She ate little, slept even less, and each evening she returned to the fence, lying down as the sun dipped below the horizon, her eyes fixed on the cheetah enclosure. Sometimes, when the wind carried their distant chirps, she'd lift her head, ears twitching, listening, hoping. But nature is both cruel and kind. Weeks turned into months, and the cubs, resilient by design, began to adapt. Kira led the way, learning to stalk and sprint under the guidance of the trainers who released mechanical prey for practice. Suri developed incredible agility, able to pivot in midair like a ribbon of muscle. Max grew powerful and bold, his strides long and confident. Slowly, the memories of the golden retriever faded beneath the demands of survival. Amira, meanwhile, tried to return to her routines. she resumed her role as a gentle companion to new rescues, a mentor to orphaned fox pups, an emotional support dog for recovering animals. Yet, whenever someone mentioned the cheetahs or the wind carried their scent, Amira's demeanor changed. Her tail would stop wagging, and she'd stare toward the far field, the place where her heart still lived. "Look at her," said Clara one evening as the sun painted the sanctuary gold. Amira was standing again at the old fence, her ears perked, her eyes reflecting the fading light. She never really moved on. 3 long years passed. The cubs had become magnificent adults, sleek, fast, and dangerous. Each weighed over 100 pounds with rippling muscles and amber eyes that could pin a gazelle from across a field. Their daily runs were breathtaking to watch. Their speed reached 70 miles per hour in a blur of spots and dust. To the casual observer, they were wild now, apex predators honed by instinct, their days ruled by rhythm and reflex. No one at the sanctuary dared to believe they remembered their puppy days. How could they? They were hunters now, or so everyone thought. Then came the storm, the kind that arrives without mercy. It swept across Cincinnati with roaring winds that howled through the sanctuary's trees. Lightning forked across the sky, and rain battered the enclosures like 1,000 drumming fists. Branches fell, alarms blared, and the staff scrambled through the chaos, securing gates and calming terrified animals. In the confusion, a service gate behind the cheetah habitat was left ajar. Amira, frightened by the thunder and searching for a quiet corner, slipped through unnoticed. She trotted down the narrow corridor, paws splashing in shallow puddles, guided by scents she hadn't followed in years. Faint, but familiar. When Clara realized Amira was missing, panic seized her. "Check every enclosure," she shouted into the radio. But even as the words left her mouth, she caught sight of a blur of gold on the security monitor. Her stomach dropped. Amira was in the cheetah corridor, and Kira was there, standing at the feeding chute, separated by only a few feet of steel. Clara's heart pounded. "Oh no, 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 no." She grabbed her radio. "All units, code red, dog inside predator zone." By the time the team reached the corridor, Amira and Kira were already face to face. Rain streamed off the metal bars, pooling between them. The air was thick with tension. Kira's body was low, muscles tight, her eyes locked onto Amira's. Every instinct screamed danger. Clara froze. One wrong move could mean death. "Don't make a sound," she whispered. "Don't startle them." For several endless seconds, the two animals stared at each other, neither moving. Then Kira tilted her head slightly and made a sound that no one expected. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a hiss. It was a chirp. Soft, high-pitched, unmistakable, the same sound cheetah cubs make when calling for their mother. Amira's ears perked up immediately. Her tail gave a hesitant wag. Then she let out a low whine, the same tone she had used 3 years ago when summoning her cubs to nurse. Kira chirped again, louder this time. From within the enclosure, rustling followed. Suri appeared first, sprinting across the grass with a flash of spotted fur, followed closely by Max. They rushed to the fence, their bodies pressed against the barrier, chirping in unison, tails lifted high, muscles relaxed. Clara could hardly breathe. "It can't be," she whispered. But it was. The recognition was undeniable. These were not predators meeting prey. They were children recognizing the mother who had once saved their lives. With trembling hands, Clara approached the control panel. "If I open that gate," she murmured, "and I'm wrong, she won't stand a chance." Her assistant shook his head. "You can't risk it." But Clara looked at Amira. Calm, tail wagging, eyes filled with pure trust. And she made her choice. She pulled the lever. The heavy gate creaked open, metal grinding against metal. Amira stepped forward without hesitation, padding softly into the enclosure. Rain slicked her golden fur as she crossed the threshold. The cheetahs circled her immediately, 3 powerful predators, towering over their adoptive mother. Clara's breath caught. For one terrible second, she feared she'd just condemned Amira to die. Then the cheetahs lowered their heads and began to rub against her, one after another, purring so loudly the vibration seemed to shake the air. Kira pressed her face to Amira's neck. Suri nuzzled her chest, and Max lay down beside her, tail flicking gently. Clara covered her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks. "They remember," she whispered. "After all this time, they remember." For the next hour, the sanctuary forgot the rain, the storm, the broken gates. All that existed was the reunion, 4 souls intertwined by love that defied every law of nature. Amira licked their faces, whining softly, tail wagging in wide, joyful arcs. The cheetahs rolled onto their sides, purring like giant cats, careful with their strength, mindful of the small, aging dog who had once kept them warm through the night. To the staff who watched, it felt like witnessing a living miracle, proof that the heart, once bonded, never truly forgets. The cheetahs groomed Amira tenderly, using their coarse tongues to smooth her fur just as they once did with each other as cubs. Kira pressed her massive head against Amira's shoulder, releasing a low, rumbling purr that vibrated through the dog's small frame. Suri curled up on one side of her, resting her chin gently across Amira's back, while Max, the largest of the 3, lay at her feet, his amber eyes half closed, utterly at peace. Amira responded the only way she knew how, by licking their faces one by one, her tail wagging non-stop, her body trembling with pure joy. It was as if time itself had bent in that moment, collapsing the years between their separation and this impossible reunion. The rain had stopped, and beams of sunlight began to filter through the clouds, falling across the group like a silent blessing. The staff watched from a distance, speechless. No one dared to interrupt. Cameras recorded, but the people behind them had tears in their eyes, unable to believe what they were witnessing. A mother and her children, separated by species and years, yet bound by something that even science struggled to explain. Clara whispered, "She remembers every sound they made, and they remember every beat of her heart." Her voice trembled as she pressed a hand to her chest. It's like watching love itself take shape. For nearly an hour, Amira and her cheetahs remained together. They played carefully, slow, deliberate movements, each one aware of the other's fragility. When Kira rolled onto her back, paws in the air, Amira nudged her belly playfully, just as she had when the cheetah was a spotted bundle of fur barely able to stand. The moment was filled with laughter from the watching staff and a warmth that spread through the sanctuary like sunlight after a long winter. When it was finally time to separate them again, Amira didn't resist. She walked calmly to the gate, glancing back at her grown cubs with soft, trusting eyes. The cheetahs followed, pressing their faces to the fence, chirping softly, not in protest but in farewell. Clara knelt beside Amira and stroked her head. "You did it again," she said softly. "You showed us what love looks like." From that day forward, the sanctuary established a new tradition. Twice a week, under the careful supervision of staff, Amira was allowed to visit her cheetah family. Every visit was a reunion, full of chirps, whines, purrs, and tail wags. Each time, the staff would gather in quiet awe, reminded of the unspoken connection that bridged 2 worlds. As months passed, Amira grew older. Her muzzle whitened, her movements slowed, but her spirit never dimmed. Each time she approached the cheetah enclosure, her steps seemed to quicken, her eyes brightening with recognition. And each time, the cheetahs, now the apex predators of the sanctuary, would soften instantly, lowering their heads, chirping in delight, circling her gently like overgrown cubs greeting their mother. It became more than a story for the sanctuary. It became a symbol. Schools visited to learn about empathy and coexistence. Documentaries were filmed, sharing Amira's quiet heroism with the world. And yet, for those who were there from the beginning, it wasn't about fame or spectacle. It was about something simpler, something sacred. The understanding that love, once given, never truly fades. The bond between Amira and her cheetah cubs defied every law of nature. It reminded the world that family isn't defined by blood, species, or boundaries. It's defined by care, by memory, and by the courage to love beyond instinct. Those cheetahs, though they had grown into fierce and powerful hunters, never forgot the golden retriever who had nursed them back to life, who had shown them warmth when the world had gone cold. They never forgot the heartbeat that once lulled them to sleep, or the soft bark that told them they were safe. Even now, when the sun dips below the horizon and the cheetahs rest in their enclosure, the staff sometimes hears a sound, a low purr blending with a faint, distant whine from Amira's kennel. Two calls answering across the distance, echoing through the twilight. It is the sound of remembrance, because sometimes the wildest hearts remember the gentlest love, and in that truth lies the reason stories like Amira's must be told, to remind us that compassion is not a human invention, but a language written into the soul of every living creature. If this story touched you, don't just watch, remember. Remember that love knows no species, no boundaries, no end. If you believe in that kind of love, then hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories that prove that the gentlest bonds can outlast even the wildest hearts.